All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining another C.U.T.E for Teams session, Champions Using Teams Effectively. And come here to geek out with me on Teams, ask any questions, put them in the chat, or come off mute since we're in a normal Teams meeting today. I'll probably make it brief today if there are no questions. In fact, thought I'd talk a little bit today about files. I had a question come up recently in a meeting with the customer. Basically, this question of when to use what in terms of files. I got SharePoint, I got OneDrive. I see the Files tab on the left rail. I see it in the Files tab in my team, in my channel. When do I use what? And so I thought I could come through and maybe show try to simplify this in some way and kind of show at a high level what all these different pieces are and how they interact. Show how Teams, I think, simplifies them a bit. So first off, let me make this screen a little bigger and come off of the standout view here in Teams. All right, should look fine here. Okay, so we're seeing our files are using SharePoint for that Files tab, and so the one point I'd make, one thing I'd point out here for those that are new to Teams and to files, is that when do I use SharePoint? Well, as a Teams person, you almost could consider like not thinking about that aspect of it. It's really when I want to do files in Teams, I use the Files tab. That is the equivalent of I use SharePoint when I'm doing files in Teams. You could say it that way, or you could take advantage of the simplicity that this UI is giving you and say, when I want to work with files with my team, share files with my team in Teams, I use the Files tab. I use SharePoint. Okay. So SharePoint versus OneDrive. SharePoint is our files. OneDrive is my files. Right. That's kind of one way I think about that. SharePoint is shared files we share with the team. The team owns them. OneDrive is my files I own. Even if I might collaborate with team members or others through OneDrive, they're still my files. I own them. Right. So SharePoint is for the team. OneDrive, from a Teams perspective, comes into play when I am in chat. So for instance, here I'm talking to Nestor and I am sharing a file with the little icon, the little paperclip. It's using OneDrive. So no SharePoint is in play here. It's actually trying to make it nice and convenient for me to use my OneDrive here. I can click that and start navigating through my OneDrive documents. But I can also upload a file from anywhere on my computer. When I do that, it's still going to upload that to a special folder in my OneDrive and use that for documents. So this came up with another customer who was not seeing the paperclip in their chat experience or meetings, and yes, that person happened to not be enabled for OneDrive, and so that explained that, right? So you can still chat, communicate, have meetings with people, but without OneDrive enabled in your account, you won't have the paperclip, okay? So again, when do I use OneDrive? You could say to yourself, I will use OneDrive when I am doing chat collaborations with people, or you could just say, you just depend on this paperclip. It happens to be OneDrive behind the scenes. But again, from a Teams perspective, trying to help you not have to make that distinction. So you can see here, whether it was chat or whether it was Teams, I did not specifically have to go here to, all my apps, go into OneDrive, go into SharePoint to do any of these things, right? So OneDrive is there. You can even see some of the folders that it's using to manage data, but I can kind of just depend on Teams to do it for me. So, for many who, were coming from are new to Teams, but you're used to SharePoint and OneDrive as these separate entities that you had to remember were there and when to use what. This might be confusing, but coming into Teams, just relying on Teams to handle your files might be a better way of kind of getting the hang of that kind of thing. Okay. So even with all that being said, Teams doing all this, again, those separate apps are still there, right? OneDrive in the web, OneDrive in my Windows Explorer. There's my OneDrive there, and even those Teams-based folders. So OneDrive still exists. I can still, do what I'm used to doing in terms of, sharing a document, even in Windows Explorer, or coming into here and doing the same thing. So I still get all of that, but I get a lot of the complexity of that hidden from me, by using Teams. You can see also the Files button here tries to incorporate those things as well. So it's talking about my recent documents and my Teams documents. In general, these are probably be SharePoint docs, and you can see from their location, site / whatever, these are all in SharePoint. Recent, some of these are my OneDrive. You can see R. Wilkins OneDrive, but a lot of these are SharePoint files. And then Teams does make it convenient for me to get to my OneDrive. So this should look pretty much like what I would see if I was in the browser, except with probably a few less bells and whistles. But I can get at all of my documents here as well. All right. And then when it comes to a meeting, if I fire up a meeting, go to calendar, go to meet now, just to get one going. Fire this up. So here I am in my meeting. There's my paperclip using my OneDrive behind the scenes. Could be using SharePoint if this was a channel meeting. Again, just I could make myself understand that, or I could just kind of depend on it being there. What is different though is this will be just fine for my channel meetings, my meetings with fellow team members, people in my org. When I am in a meeting with an external person, I suspect this will go away. Teams is basically saying, I don't know that person. I'm going to kind of turn off file sharing in this case. So that's an example when you might not see that firing up a meeting, and then you bring an external person, you'll see that disappear. But in general, we got files in meetings as well. I'm trying to remember all the places where files kind of come into play. So we talked about chat, we talked about the Teams, the files tab there for Teams. And then of course I can open up the browser and actually, do whatever I need to do there, including all the things that SharePoint can do, right? If I needed to do some advanced permissions on one of these files, or something like that, I can do all that nice and easy. So that's a real high-level view of Teams, the who, what, and when of files in Teams, or files in general. And having said all that, I just, I like to point out that I think Teams simplifies what in the past was a small handful of separate tools for doing files. Teams gives you this single pane of glass for all your file management. If you kind of went all in to this Teams thing, it would be a world where all your file collaboration with your team is in this files button. All of your OneDrive activity that you might be doing, maybe you're doing that in chats with people, or maybe you just need to manage your own OneDrive files on your own, and so you could still stay in Teams and maybe use this OneDrive button here. But at the end of the day, Teams can be that one single area where all things files are happening. So it is combining the basics of SharePoint, the basics of OneDrive in one interface, and especially when it comes to working with your team, your inner team, gets a little different when you're working externally, collaborating, but working with that inner team, it can really be all through that team's interface for a large part of what you might do. So I hope that helps, and helps you give a little background there. We can dive into more files conversations in future sessions. We certainly have talked about files in past sessions, so check the YouTube playlist if you want to look back and see some of the other things we've talked about with files. But just thought that would be useful. So with that said, I'll kind of just make this short here and give everybody some time back. No questions today. And yeah, we'll see you next week with more cool topics for teams. All right. Have a good one.